Well, I think we're live.
We're
I
live,
I think
dude.
we're
Huh?
going here. I think we're doing this. It's the Catholic Keith takeover here. The first step towards world. Oh my goodness.
This is the summit of Keith's. Keith Summit.
Too many Keiths in the same room at the same time.
K3.
I can't even talk. It's the first step to world domination. Three Catholic Keiths together at last. Welcome to our live stream. I have never been a part of something so disorganized since I think my bachelor party, which I didn't even plan. I was part of, obviously, but this is approaching pandemonium levels of disorganization. But we're live, we're here. So thank you. Guys, I'm not running this thing, but de facto have become the leader of this small gang of Keiths. I don't know why, but I thought we'd begin by introducing ourselves, so that those on other channels and those listening on the podcast will know whose voice is whose and whose is whose. So I'm not going to start. Keith Nestor, why don't you introduce yourself? Because no one's ever heard of you. You're the least popular of the Catholic Keiths, I think.
Well, thank you, Keith. And Keith, welcome. So, yeah, my name is Keith Nestor, and I want to welcome everyone who's watching on my YouTube channel. It's good to see all you guys. I see some friends in the chat already. And I am a convert to the Catholic faith from Protestant ministry, where I spent about 22 years working in ministry. I became a Catholic in 2017. And one of the first things I ever did as a Catholic outside of my own little world was go on to this killer podcast with another guy named Keith, and his name is Mr. Keith Little, who runs the Cordial Catholic podcast. So he's the Keith next to me. And then, so I'm going to pass the buck over to him, and then we'll get to the other Keith down there.
Oh my goodness. It's not a true crime podcast. You say killer podcast. Sounds like it's like a true crime. Those are popular. This is a Catholic podcast, the Cordial Catholic. So I'm Keith Little from the Cordial Catholic. I like Keith Nestor. I'm a convert to the Catholic faith. I began podcasting about 4 years ago, letting people like Keith on my show. I'm not always sure why, to tell their conversion journey or to unpack pieces of Catholic belief, doctrine, dogma, practice that look weird or strange to non-Catholics, Christians on the outside, or new Catholics who are looking to dig deeper into their faith. So the whole point and purpose of my show is to showcase the beauty of the faith through conversion stories and through digging deeper into pieces of the Catholic faith. And I had on my show a while back the Keith below me, Keith from Grassroot Catholic, who has I don't know, there's the coolest following, the coolest Instagram account.
Oh, it's the best.
Everything you do, Keith, I am constantly amused by, including the thumbnail for this YouTube live stream, which again, it's awesome. Keith, tell us who are you?
Okay, well, thanks, Keith and Keith. I'm the non-cordial Catholic or non-cordial Keith. No, so I run an Instagram page. I'm just gonna wait until yeah, there we go. Okay, I was wondering just that awkward moment. So yeah, my whole thing is I'm on Instagram mostly. I do have quite a handful of individuals on YouTube, but I primarily use Instagram as a way to help kind of share some of the lost traditions of our Catholic faith to millennials. I'm a millennial. So wanting to share the things that I wish I would have known when I was a little bit younger. And then obviously getting married, you start diving deeper, and then you have kids. And you're like, I need to get a child baptized here. So it's just trying to share some of those. And sometimes, memes, funny videos are thrown along there as well. So.
Yeah, and we did a Instagram live. Keith and I did, and right around the time of I think it was Lent was beginning, and I remember I was down in Hot Springs, Arkansas, on the end of our Rosary Crew trip, and I was walking through the park with my wife, and we had this live appointment, and we weren't quite back to the RV yet, so she's like, you better hurry. So we got on there. I remember we started. I was walking on the trail, trying to get back to my camper. But yeah, both of you Keiths out there have really interesting spaces that you occupy on the internet. You know, Keith Little, you're of course the podcast king. I mean, your podcast is like top 5 in Uzbekistan and southern Burma, and I think like I don't know, like some other places in the Far East, and you know. Grassroots Keith, of course, you know, takes over the Instagram. I mean, we all just sort of pick up the crumbs from what he lays down on there.
Number 1 in India.
Yes.
Just kidding.
So I've got Malta nailed down pretty tightly.
So I do have a couple questions for you guys, being that, you know, people are picking up on the whole Keith thing. We're getting the Keitholic Church, Keitholic. I thought a great idea, you know, like Roman Catholicism, and that could be like pictures of us with like weird hats on or whatever. But is it just me, or do you guys get called Kevin all the time?
I don't know.
That was part of one of my questions, but yes, Kevin. I get Kevin so much.
Kevin,
and I'm at a point in my life where I run with it.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even try. We're new here in town. We've been here about a year and 5 days actually, where we are now. We've just moved after 20 years in a town, moved to a new town, and our neighbors, our one neighbor from the get-go started calling me Kevin, and I tried a few times. No, it's Keith. No, Keith, Kei. I've given up. I figure he's in his 80s. He just might go before he. Although I've hatched a plan. Like, this is my new plan. Okay, so we're having a 4th child like next week, quite literally next week, and I figure we'll just do little birth announcement postcards. You know, picture of the baby, and say like, you know, all of our names of the family, and then he's got it there in print. But I'm sure
it won't matter.
It won't matter, right? It won't matter. It won't. I think it, but it won't. It won't matter.
Well, the trick here is that on the postcard or the card you're sending out, you put your own name as Kevin, and people will like, oh yeah, it's Keith.
Oh yeah,
perfect.
Do you also get Keith?
I don't
know.
Spelled
Kieth.
Yeah.
Have you ever met someone who spells their name Ki? Because
No.
I get that all the time.
And if I did, I would probably punch him in the face. You're the reason.
You're the guy. Because you know there's one guy out there who spells it that way and is ruining it for all the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
I just, you know, more than meeting you, I met you first, Keith Nestor, a number of years back, and more than meeting a fellow Catholic convert, a fellow Keith was like what I think first really deepened our friendship. Because when I asked you, hey, do you ever get called Kevin? And you said, oh my gosh, yes. I think that like solidified for me our lifelong friendship from then on, Keith.
Yeah, for sure. Although I did have one interesting experience. I was at a parish mission in Ohio, and they had, you know, signs around. I provide like flyers and stuff for churches that book me to come and speak.
I remember that.
And they're like really nicely designed flyers. I mean, they've got like photography and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, they look really good. And then there were like these like pieces of like pastel construction paper that just said Larry Nestor here tonight.
Larry?
Yeah. I was like,
Larry.
That's a new one.
That was my favorite.
But they had them both up. They had the regular flyers, and then I'm like, is there another guy named Larry Nestor coming around here? But no, it's just a mistake. You know, it happens. But
I love that.
Yeah, you know, I feel like there's you know, since I've become Catholic, I don't know about you guys, but I've met so many amazing people, and you guys are on that list. And I just, for our audience tonight, which is people from all 3 of our YouTube channels, especially Keith Grassroots, who just literally started his YouTube channel 10 minutes ago.
9.
Yeah. I want to welcome all the people from his channel, but tell us a little bit about your faith journey in the year 2020. Okay. So 2020 was a crazy year for each of us, but I want to hear like what that looked like for you. Starting with, let's start with Keith Little here.
Wow, you're taking over the hosting duties. I like this. Thank you.
That.
I appreciate this. Is that me? You said
yeah, you're Keith Little.
Because you were talking, I wasn't really listening to what you were saying. I just thought, wow,
I'm 6'2". Come on.
He's talking so much. Yeah, you know what? 2022 for us was an absolute unhinged year.
No, I said 2020, not 2022. Pay attention.
No, you said
I don't care about
2022.
2022. That's so recent. We want to know about 2020, man.
2020. Do I have to think back to 2020 now? What happened in 2020?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't remember that far back.
You don't remember 3 years?
No,
I had to look at the calendar. 3 years ago?
I don't know what happened back then.
All right, fine. 2022. Have it your way.
What happened in 2020 that's so important for you? Why didn't you tell us first what happened?
Well,
just pick it.
2020 was like the year the year that I started doing ministry stuff full time, and
Wow.
I had just quit my job to because I had all these speaking events lined up and this book coming out and all this stuff ready to rock. And I literally quit my job. I told my boss my last day is February 27th, and my first traveling thing was down to Lafayette, Louisiana on March 13th. Yeah. And I was on the way home, then I had something that weekend and everything got canceled, like boom, all right there on the spot,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
kind of threw our whole world into a tailspin. But it was really, that was the impetus for the starting of the Rosary Crew,
Yes.
our live stream Rosary group, because that wouldn't have happened if we were supposed to be, my family was supposed to be on a overseas trip to Rome. But we didn't go. We ended up not going because the coronavirus was shutting everything down. And if we had gone, I don't even know if we'd have the Rosary Crew.
Yeah, that's true. That's an amazing story. I remember that now because you literally were launching, like you imagine you you feel a calling from God to really quit your full-time job to begin
both of them.
Ministry.
At the time, I had 2 full-time jobs.
I remember that because when I talked to you on my show after seeing your video on YouTube way back when, you were working not in ministry anymore, not as a Protestant pastor.
Right.
You were Catholic and you were holding down jobs, and you quit those jobs and then get geared up to get things going, and then everything shuts down. Like, that's crazy. That's wild.
It was nuts.
But then that's the impetus for you to start the Rosary Army, right? We're all locked in at home for 2 weeks. Remember, it was 2 weeks at the start. That was the shutdown. And I remember you thought, oh, I'm going to try doing this thing, like, praying the Rosary together for those of us who are all separate. And gosh, didn't that grow into something amazing, Keith? Like, that's an amazing.
We're still doing it every day. I just did it 2 hours ago. So we've been praying the Rosary every single day since March 18th of 2020.
Wow, that's insane.
And it's incredible. It's evolved into so much. But that was then 2020. I mean, that was really. It started with going on the journey home. And I was the last guest to film before they shut down. I think I was the last interview that Marcus Grodi did.
Wow.
And then, then everything went crazy. But, and that just goes to show you, it's like God knew. That didn't surprise God. He knew what was going on. But I think if he would have said to me, okay, you're going to quit everything, get all this stuff lined up, and everything's going to have the carpet yanked out from underneath you. Still want to do this? I don't know.
Yeah.
But imagine if I try to imagine all the time. Imagine if I hadn't, it's like,
I know.
It's been amazing. Wow. So what about you, Mr. Grassroots? How was your 2020?
It was a blast.
When did you start your Instagram account? When did you first start doing that?
May of 2021.
Okay.
So
tell us about that. How did that start?
Yeah. And for anybody that's wondering, Keith's Instagram account is called Grassroots Catholic. Go and follow his channel right now.
There's no root. There's no roots. It's Grassroots.
Grassroots. Sorry, Grassroots is a different guy. It's a different Keith.
Some guy named that's a different.
It's an additional cross that I have to bear that you guys don't have to deal with. It's a Keith first, and then the Grassroots Catholic thing with the S in it. It's okay.
That's true.
It's okay. It's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, whatever. So initially. So my side hustle has been like acting. Like I've had a talent agency. I go to auditions for commercial work, some film, and when COVID hits, that completely stopped. And so I was like, well, okay, well, I need to use my creativeness. I need to get those juices flowing. Otherwise, I just get depressed. And so I try to figure out different ways to do it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do something on Instagram. I don't know. I'll play around with that. And I'm like, wait. I can use my faith and do something for him. And also because within the industry, you guys understand it's not really faith-based or at least it wasn't back then. It's now getting to see more of that, thankfully. But then once things started getting back into gear, it was like, hey, in order to audition for this role that you probably won't get, we need to see your vaccination status. I'm like, well, I don't know. No, I'm going to pass on that. And then it was like, well, you need a booster card you need to show us to audition. And it was just like one thing after another. And I'm like, well, I just don't have that. So I'm just going to count myself out on that. And then I just ended things amicably with my agency last year because I was like, well, I get more fulfillment out of this as opposed to being on a Taco Time commercial.
Tacos.
So Taco Time. Yeah, I was on a Taco Time commercial. It's a Northwest. Yeah, Pacific Northwest establishment.
I like this comment from Joan. Hey, Keith Little, can you put the comments up on the screen? Click on Joan's comment. It says, "Dear Keith, you have my permission to take over the world before the devil does."
Oh, look at this. I have not done the live stream before, Joan.
You didn't know you could do that, did you?
That's
so
amazing.
Everybody watching, Keith Little's running this thing. My hands are off this thing. So,
I don't know how to do this.
He's never done this before. So if
you interrupted Taco Time.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I got distracted with Taco Time.
It's okay. So ideally it was just those circumstances that fell into play. And I like creative control. And so this was the ability to kind of dwell on that and kind of going back to what I mentioned, what my channel is about. And it's kind of blossomed. It's not me. I can't imagine. I mean, it's partial me, but it's mostly, his will, but yeah. So that's it.
So are you a family man?
I'm a family man. Married. I have 3, technically, 1 along the way.
I don't know what that means.
I'm going to let you figure that one out. Math is not my strongest suite. So
no, coming to 3 took a long time. So I would say.
So yeah, I'm a family man,
folks.
Yeah. I'm an actor.
That's good. Oh, that's great. So, yeah. I love it.
I have a question for you Keiths. What has been your most controversial content that you've posted, that you've done a podcast on?
Oh,
what has it been?
Oh, well, I know that Keith Nestor likes to poke the bear. I've seen a few things he's posted.
What?
That are you've told me this too. You said things that are a little bit spicy, or I see a video and go, oh yeah, he's trying to get things riled up there, because I know a lot of you have a large audience on YouTube, and a lot of I get these too. The pretty intense anti-Catholic comments from people who really have an axe to grind. I know, Keith Nestor, that you have sometimes responded cordially, mind you, to some of these comments in your own videos. So you can answer this, but I know you have some controversial content out there.
Well, okay, so I have to ask the question though: controversial to whom? Because do you mean within Catholic people, or do you mean like within Protestant people? Because if you're going to say the most controversial thing that Protestants get upset at me about, I got a long list. But if it's about like a Catholic thing, okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be a little bit different for me because I am not one to try to be controversial in the Catholic space. Mm-hmm. And I have a few reasons for that. But mainly for me, it's because I want the purpose for what I'm trying to do really is to be helpful to people and help them grow in their faith. And if something I say is controversial to somebody on accident or whatever, they have a different opinion about it, that's fine. But I am not going to purposely make controversial statements within the Catholic space to try to get people to click on my videos and watch my stuff. I'm just not doing that. There's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah. And
I'm just not going to do it. And it doesn't mean that I don't have opinions about things. It doesn't mean that I don't have my own take on stuff or that I'm wishy-washy, because I'm not. I'm a very opinionated person. But I don't want to sing that song. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
to me, that's the lowest hanging fruit in YouTube land is trying to incite fear or anger in people in order to get them to watch your channel. And I would say this, if you're trying to grow a YouTube channel, you do those two things and that will happen, right? Or you become really like, appeal to people's flesh, which none of us are doing that. But like in terms of
Keith Little totally is.
I was going to say,
I shouldn't speak for Keith, but anyway. So I think you understand what I'm saying, right? So but I would say that like if there was anything that I've talked about that has been kind of controversial in the Catholic space, I mean, it's pretty tame compared to other people. But I've made some videos talking about my experience in the TLM, the Latin Mass, and some people just get triggered by that, even if I'm not coming across or trying to come across as some sort of like liturgical purist or some kind of I'm a better Catholic than you are because I go to the Latin Mass. I don't do that, but some people just are triggered by that. So like I could just say, hey, I really like the Latin Mass. And I've had people that have just railed on me and said, well, you're a snob or you're this or whatever. And if they do that, that's on them. But so I would say probably that. And the other thing that I've said that's been controversial a little bit, I haven't really like gone super deep dive, but I have talked about things like Medjugorje because it's part of my story. I don't make videos about why you should believe in Medjugorje or whatever, but just when I tell my testimony that plays into that, some people get controversial about that. But I will say this. I have one other thing I want to say about this, then it'll be Keith's turn. Like the thing that has generated the most heat from other Catholics to me has been stuff that I think is just so stupid and goofy that people get worked up about. Like, oh, well, like you get hyped up when you talk about things. You're too intense. You don't sound like a Catholic. I had somebody the other day say, well, you don't look like a Catholic. I'm like, what does a Catholic look like? Like one person told me, they said, you're just trying to be a tough guy. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like 5'6", 160 pounds. I'm not trying to be a tough guy, right? Like that ain't happening. But some people are just kind of offended by just my personality, I guess. And because I'm not either like super prim and proper and wear a suit. I had a lady one time get mad at me because I wore a t-shirt like this. I wore a Harley Davidson t-shirt one time when I still had a Harley before I had the Indian. And some guy told me that was not Catholic. So like, that's the kind of stuff that people get after me about is that I don't look the part of whatever kind of Catholic they think I should, or they don't like my background, or they don't like the music in my video. I get that all the time. Oh, what's this demon music? The intro to Catholic Feedback. That's just like instrumental guitar playing, people. So I don't know what to call that other than just people just not liking me or whatever, which is totally understandable, but I don't like step into a lot of controversial stuff. What about you, Mr. Little?
I'm not controversial. I'm Canadian, first of all, and it's the cordial Catholic. It's really an aspirational title, so I try my best to be cordial. So I don't rock I have not rocked the Catholic world. I don't think, but there's plenty of non-Catholic Christians and very angry people that don't like things that I post. And I think one of my most controversial videos that I posted was an interview that I absolutely loved. It was with a guy called Dr. Brad Gregory, and he doesn't do very many interviews. So I got him. I don't know how I got him. He won't come back on the show because he said, you know what, that was enough. Like I don't do these normally. I don't want to do any feedback or follow up. And he's a professor of I think history somewhere. I can't remember where he is, but his whole thesis, he's a Catholic, is how the Reformation kind of ruined the world and all the unintended consequences of the Protestant Reformation. And he just nailed it. It was amazing. Our interview was just so thorough. Like he explains very clearly why the Protestant Reformation has really the echoes of that has really dismantled kind of Christianity in general. And we see now, issues around sexuality, issues around like morality, issues around, all kinds of things, all the different kinds of problems we see today in the world that we see and go, what's going on? He can kind of trace back to the Reformation and that kind of undoing and that kind of the idea of private interpretation of Scripture, the idea of no more kind of corporate church, but each person with their Bible interpreting kind of things and the fracturing of that into denominations. So that interview, I loved it. It was amazing, but very controversial, obviously, because his kind of conclusion is pretty dramatic and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way who watched that. I mean, the thing is, it was so thorough. Like he's got it. Like this is why we live in a world we live in now. It's quite clear tracing this out. In large part, the Reformation kind of dismantled some of these structures. So you watch that, and your response can be just kind of close your ears and close your eyes and ignore that, or get angry and try and rail back at him. But that was interesting. The other thing that I think that I love, I a while ago recorded a video. One of my driving to work videos that everybody hates because they always comment, "You're gonna get around. Look at it." And honestly, guys, like my phone is mounted on the dashboard. I'm looking straight ahead. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking and I'm driving. Like it was, I could talk to a passenger in the car and be totally safe talking and driving. I'm not I'm not looking at anyway. Those comments are always hilarious, but I made one on Sola Scriptura, and the question was, 1 minute video, where is Sola Scriptura in the Bible? Was my question, and I kind of just talked about really, really briefly how you can't find that in the Bible. You can impose it on the Bible, but as a Christian, that rule of faith, the Catholics would say, no, there's more to it, to being Catholic than just the Bible. There's tradition, there's a magisterium with the Pope and the bishops, but as for Sola Scriptura, the Protestant, like the principle of Protestantism, is not in the Bible. That was my video. And the video was called "Where is Sola Scriptura in the Bible?" And what I love and why this is controversial is because there's a billion views and a billion comments, but every single comment when it comes in, I look at it and I laugh because every single comment that comes in is somebody saying, "Well, where is Mary in the Bible? Where is the Pope in the Bible?" And nobody is answering the question. And I'm like, guys, yes, this is the whole point. Like you can't answer that question. So for me, it's controversial because people just get mad about it and write comments. But I'm gonna one day do a video, the compilation of all the comments on that video, and go, look, you guys just proved my point because nobody is answering this question. Where is it in the Bible? And nobody has the answer. So I think that to me is controversial because that just keeps giving and giving and giving, but nobody's got that answer. So that's always interesting.
Still waiting on it.
What about you, Grassroot?
Well, sometimes I like to stir the nest a little bit, and hear me out. It's not to get clicks, really. It's just there's a lot of people on both ends of the spectrum who really just stick into their bubble. And I want to kind of pop it a bit, and I'm very much like the both of you. Like I'm never going to share and force my opinion on XYZ topic just for the clicks or for the views. But sometimes like I just look at the comments and I'm like, you think this way, but maybe you should not be so rigid, or maybe you should have a little bit more rigidity and some of these things that you're referring to. So sometimes I like to kind of stir the nest a little bit, but not be offensive about it, if that makes sense.
So like what? Give us an example.
Alrighty. So one thing that stirred the nest is there was a reel I made. This was maybe like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I've kind of kept it a little bit less so. My wife's my filter, so like if I know something's gonna be a little controversial, I'll run it by her, and she's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, cool, all right. Guess I'll be saving that." But this one was with an Instagram Reels. There's you can put text on a screen and you can remove it. So I had it like I'm trying to remember the exact verbiage of it, but it was leaving Catholicism because of priests or something of that nature. Like don't. At the end of the day, the message was don't leave Peter because of Judas. And I got a lot of angry Catholics, and it might have been just Catholic by name, that stated, well, there's been a whole bunch of bad priests out there. This is why. And then just all these excuses, like, okay, hold on. Let's talk about this. Like
they wanted an excuse to leave the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, well, what about Jesus? Why would you say Peter? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to get into this. So yeah, that was probably my most controversial one. But.
Yeah. Well, I had a video made about me. Okay, so I'll tell you guys this story. It's really interesting. It's so I made this video about once saved, always saved. Okay. And I'm against it, by the way. And that really like poked the bear of the independent KGV only Baptists or whatever. And several videos were made by other people about me and my content, mostly about me, not really about my content. But one guy made a video, and the video, and I haven't brought this up because I don't want everybody to go look at it. Okay. But a guy made a video that literally the thumbnail of it is me in the flames of hell. And it says Catholic Keith Nestor is going to hell. And I'm like, I got to see this. So I watched it, and the guy literally sounds like this. No joke. I mean, this guy probably also was a voiceover actor for the mud bog events that they have at the state fair, where it's like gear grinding, axle smashing fun. And he was like, Catholic Keith Nestor is going to hell. Let's pray. And then he opened in prayer. Anyway, so he made this video. Well, my son, who's not Catholic, saw the video, and he actually sent it to a couple of his buddies and was like, check out what these people are saying about my dad. Well, one of those guys, he's like, they're like 24. Okay. One of those young men who he was sort of raised Catholic. He was baptized Catholic, went to Catholic school, but never really went into the, into the church. He was actually in my youth group when I was a Protestant youth pastor. And then he became an atheist. And I'm like, oh, great. I did a really good job there. He saw the video, and then he started he said it really made him begin to think, wow, if what Keith is saying is so controversial, I got to find out more about this. So then he started watching all of my Catholic stuff. And long story short, I met with him last week, and he's been like completely doing a deep dive on Catholicism. And he's like wants to join the church, so wants to come back to the church. So tomorrow I'm taking him to daily mass, introducing him to our priest. He's going to do his first confession and then very shortly. And he's going to he wants to jump back into his faith because some guy made a video called Keith Nestor's Going to Hell.
Backfired. I love it.
I love it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what I videos like these, right? And videos like even my Soul Scriptura thing and stuff you make, Grassroot Keith, the more comments you get, negative or positive, the more people see that, right? So those negative comments, those angry people, they're just doing the Lord's work. They're just pushing that video out to more people, even with their angry comments. Like that just means more people are going to see it, right? And that's a great example, Keith Nestor, of when that backfires, right? Of when even behind somebody's angry intentions of putting you into flames of hell, which sounds pretty cool, actually. I want to see that and hear that, right? Christ can work through that for a positive thing, right? To bring somebody back. I love that. That's amazing. What about maybe I don't know, this is maybe too broad. Like I wanted to think about like your favorite thing about being Catholic, but is that too hard of a question to answer? Is that too broad?
Very Canadian question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing?
Typical.
We also love the faith. We defend the faith because we love the faith, right? I don't know. Is there nothing? Is there...
No, I'd say let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, you go first, Keith.
Yeah, go for it, Keith.
I think it means you, Keith.
No, I just talked. It's your turn.
Which? Yeah, me?
I just said Keith.
Yeah,
yeah. I love
interpret how you want.
I'll interpret that.
I could be talking about myself in the third person. I don't know.
Have you guys seen that? Are you guys too young for Seinfeld?
No. How old do you think we are?
You know the Seinfeld episode where there's the guy Jimmy and he refers to himself in the third person. He's always like, Jimmy, we'll see you later. Jimmy's new in town.
Yes.
We did that here. We'd be in serious trouble.
We would, wouldn't we? Yeah.
Favorite thing about being Catholic. All right. Keith will go ahead. Man, there's so many, I feel like this answer changes every few days.
Yes.
The truth is, whatever my favorite thing about Catholic is, whatever I'm thinking about in that moment. It's like whatever I'm focused on in that moment is kind of like when I go to a Chinese buffet. It's like whatever I'm eating in that moment is like, this is the best. And then I go eat that thing. Like, oh, that's the best. But right now, I think like what I'm really excited about in the Catholic faith is the beauty of the catechism. One of my buddies, he's on here right now. At least he was. His name's Aaron. He's a Protestant pastor. And he's been going through the catechism and reading it. And he said to me a couple weeks ago, we were having dinner at his house, and he picked it up and he just goes, "This is beautiful. This is beautiful." And he's read lots of different catechisms. I mean, he's a very well-read person. But I'm just so thankful that we have a definitive statement of our faith that we can point to that cuts through all of the ambiguity, confusion, and emphasis that people want to put on everything, because everybody's got their thing that they would always talk about, that they'd always push, that they'd always, whether it be like end times or the gifts of the Holy Spirit, or what different people have their different little pet theology things that they love. And the catechism of the Catholic Church just sort of takes it all together and says, this is what we're going to show the world our faith is. And I mean, I came out of the Methodist church that is completely falling apart right now because nobody can figure out what's going on. I mean, there was a NPR story I heard driving down the road this morning about the Methodist church falling apart. And even the people making the story thought it was ridiculous how that was all going down. And I'm just like, and they were like, what's the answer? And I'm yelling at the radio in my car. I'm like, become Catholic. So having a definitive statement of faith that isn't just the product of human beings getting together and voting and deciding is probably my favorite thing right now.
Man, that's such a huge thing. And so many people who I have on my show talking about their conversion journeys end up mentioning that idea, right? And I said something recently that I think it was actually pretty controversial, if we're talking about that still. But it's true. And it was that the Catholic Church doesn't care what you think.
That's right.
And that's really actually super affirming. Like that is because so much of the world, so much of even, you're saying the Methodist church, right? And for me, Pentecostal, non-denominational church, it cares what you think in terms of it cares how you understand that theology and your Bible. It cares because you can stop going there and go somewhere else that cares more the way you care to interpret Scripture, right? But the Catholic Church and the Catechism, right, is the definitive statement of the faith. It doesn't care what you think. It's there, take it or leave it. And that, like I'm thinking of a Chesterton quote, right? Something along the lines of like, the church is the one thing that frees man from being a slave of the age, right? And that's the whole thing, right? Take it or leave it. The Catholic Church teaches this. It says this comes from the apostles who Christ gave authority to bind and loose. Here's what we believe. We believe it's the Holy Spirit has guarded this down through the ages. This is the actual teaching that Christ passed on. You can take it and love it and practice it and find the joy that we've all found in this, or you can take off. Like it's up to you. And that is so freeing, coming from a background where we had to kind of wrestle out our own faith and hope that we were interpreting it properly. And if not, leave that church or convince that church to change. And like you said, Keith Nestor, vote on certain things. You're voting, is this how you understand this? Or is it understood this way? Like I have friends who are Methodists, I have friends who are Anglicans, and these big denominations that are just voting on things, but much more freeing to be in a church that says, this is how it is. We believe that this is what the Holy Spirit has given us and passed down through time. Take it or leave it, right? And that sounds not very cordial. It sounds I don't know, not very empathetic maybe to say this. Yeah, but that's what it is, right? And it you can choose to embrace that or not. And I guess the caveat is, a cordial caveat is you can not understand it all fully and still embrace it, right? You don't have to have, You don't have to go, yeah, I understand every page of the catechism. I agree with all of it. It all makes sense. I'm going to become Catholic. There is room to go, I don't quite get this all yet, but I think the church is what it says it is. And you can make steps towards the church without having to understand it all, but accept that, yeah, the church is that church founded by Christ on the apostles, passed down through time, right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really good answers. I would say there's two things that I really enjoy about it. One is somewhat related to both of your answers, where if I have a question about anything about Catholicism, there's always going to be an answer, like always.
Yeah.
I can search for it. Oh, there's the answer. Perfect. There's no like ambiguity. There's no stonewalling. Like, why are you asking this question? There's something wrong with you type of situation that you can see from different denominations. Like, they don't want you questioning, but it's almost like, no, question. Like, you want to know the answer, don't you? So I love that about it. I also love when people start getting interested about your faith, like in person, and you're like, yeah, okay, let's talk about it. Let's go to adoration. Why don't we do that? That sounds like a fun, and then just let Jesus do his thing. So yeah, those are probably two favorite things about that.
I love that too. My son, who just turned 8, has also just begun altar serving, which I think that's a whole other
Nice.
like that's not like a defending the faith. That's not like a catechism. That's not like this totally different way of other thing here that I love with the faith. But just seeing through our son's eyes that practice of the faith, like, and talking to him about being that close to the altar and close to the miracle of consecration of the Eucharist, and serving the priest, and his joy and excitement to get to ring the Sanctus bell, or he gets to do different things. I'm waiting for the day that they bring out the incense. It happens, depending on the priest, it happens semi-regularly in our parish, depending who's serving. But the one priest who's often the incenser, the one week modal, our son's little buddy was sitting next to the thurible, and it was just smoking like that. He was getting like smoked out. He was caught trying to, not to cough in front of everybody. I'm like, and we were laughing, like, and he's like, yeah, I want to do that too. That looks really cool. Like the smoke machine. But that seeing that through his eyes, and the joy for my wife and I being converts, to now pass on this faith that we chose to convert into, because we loved it and wanted to embrace it. Now passing that on to the first generation cradle Catholic, that's crazy, right? That we're raising first generation cradle Catholics as two crazy converts, but passing that on and seeing our kids embrace that is amazing, right? You with fresh eyes, you begin to kind of unpack again why you love these things with the faith, and why you first fell in love with it. It's amazing.
I'm slightly jealous that both of you are converts, slightly, because you probably know more than I do know, and probably based in your previous lives with the knowing the Bible in and out. I don't. Well, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. But there's I have friends that are converts, and I'm like, I'm so impressed by someone willing to just leave what they were doing before and join the Catholic Church, because it's not easy. I'm sure both of you had challenges and whatnot.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Nestor gave up his livelihood. I mean, that's a wild thing to do, Keith.
Well, I tell you what, I have never had a moment of regret from that. The only moment of regrets I've had have been just, why didn't you do it sooner?
Yeah.
But we can't dwell on that, because God has used everything, even the tough things, even the mistakes, even the, I love the way the book of Genesis ends with Joseph saying, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And God can take even things that other people intend for evil, and even things that we do that are evil or whatever. Like, if those things are submitted ultimately to God's authority, then he can work anything out. So we have to just trust that. So for me, leaving my career and livelihood, I don't know. I think God has just given me this incredible grace that I don't know. It's weird. Like, people say things to me sometimes like, oh, I bet it was hard not being a pastor anymore because you did that for so long and you loved it, which I did. But it was just almost like God has helped me to understand when doors are shut and doors are open, and to truly not look back. I take that verse seriously where Jesus says, whoever puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for service in the kingdom of heaven. And I think that's a powerful verse for all of us, whether we're converts or whether we're cradle Catholics, because there's always going to be a part of us that is undergoing conversion. So Grassroot, you're a convert too. It's just a convert from one thing that's different than what I'm a convert from. And Keith Little, he's a convert from something different than I'm a convert from. We're all converts. The point isn't where did we start? The point is, where are we going and where are we right now? And the truths that are applied in my life apply to everybody else's life too, because those moments of sacrifice for holiness or faithfulness, those get applied across the board. And there are plenty of Catholic people who are cradle Catholics, but have to make hard choices. They have to make difficult things. Maybe they're engaged to somebody who is opposed to their faith, and they're saying, I talk to people in this situation a lot. They're like, what do I do? I've got this thing in my life that is against what the church is saying, and I want to get involved in my faith. But for me to get back into the church is going to require a whole lot of sacrifice and suffering. What do I do? That's what I'm talking about, right? But we've got to remember that following Jesus isn't just about, well, I was Protestant, now I'm Catholic. It's discipleship is a constant daily conversion. Yeah. That's why we take up our cross every day to follow Jesus. That in and of itself is a moment of conversion.
That's a preacher.
Yeah, my goodness. No wonder you're a world-renowned speaker. My goodness.
I wouldn't call it that.
I take it back then, okay?
Okay, yeah, take it back now.
Yeah. I want to, that's I love that daily conversion thing. And that's so true.
Yeah, that's great.
And one thing I love about the Catholic faith is that there are so many ways, and this, Grassroot Keith, there are so many ways to be and practice Catholic, like practice your faith as a Catholic, that you don't have to, your daily conversion doesn't have to be the rosary every single day. It doesn't have to be reading scripture a certain way every single day, or praying certain prayers every single day. There's so many ways to access the Catholic faith, to deepen that walk with Christ, to daily, reconvert in your walk, and to grow as a disciple. Like I'm thinking, you're a great Grassroot Keith, for posting videos on sometimes obscure things, obscure Catholic practices, the scapulars and consecrations. And I'm thinking all these things. I learned so much from you on these really deep dive, really deep Catholic kind of practices that it just, for me, showcased just how diverse the Catholic world is, and how you could practice your faith in so many different ways. Like, have you discovered new ways to be Catholic through making the videos that you made, or these things you knew? I'm just sharing now, because for me, I'm like, well, I didn't know that or that or that. Like, you have some pretty deep dives into different Catholic practices.
I think it's a little bit of both. There's some things that I knew or experienced, and then I feel like there's always kind of what Keith Nestor. Sorry, I feel awkward. I should just say Keith. What you just said before about we're always almost like reconverting every day. It's kind of like that, learning about our faith in general. Like, there's never a point where we're going to know everything about our faith. It's always something is new when you're doing research, or you're just looking about the church. The plethora of different churches in the Eastern world. There's so many different beautiful things that maybe we'll never touch upon, but it's always interesting to take some of those world viewpoints. Like, have you ever been to Byzantine Divine Liturgy? It's beautiful. Go to it. I didn't even know what a Byzantine was when I was in my early 20s. And I had no idea that there's an Eastern church. Okay. Western church is all I knew. And so like knowing about, hey, we can actually breathe with both lungs, go to a divine liturgy, experience the beauty of the Eastern liturgy. So there's so many aspects of it that like there's never going to be a time where I'm thinking I'm out of ideas on to share. Like there's always going to be something, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing, right? Because you go, for me and Keith Nestor, you go from a pretty, I don't know, can I say bland like Christian life, where you have your Bible and you pray, and there's midweek Bible studies, and there's youth group, and but the buffet, the Chinese buffet you mentioned earlier, Nestor, is much more limited, I think, than the buffet that you suddenly have before you. It's a worldwide spread of so many different kinds of ways of being Catholic, of practicing your faith. I mean, you can look at like the most obscure, devotion to a saint in like the smallest, strangest country in the world, that's just deeply rooted in that country, deeply Catholic, and go, wow, I've never even heard of this saint, yet this devotion here is huge. The miracles that follow this are huge. The piety and practice of the faith and the zealousness of these Catholics over here, it's amazing. I've never heard of this thing before. Like, it's just it's so diverse, and I love that. I love that diversity and the ways of being Catholic. Like, you even think of, for a time in my life, I prayed Liturgy of the Hours, morning, evening prayer. And I found that so fulfilling, to pray the prayer that everyone, all these Catholics across the world, all the priests, all the religious are praying, to join in that, right? As Vatican II encouraged us to do. We forget this. I don't hear this very often, but we're meant to pray these prayers. That we're encouraged to pray these prayers. That's a beautiful tradition, to think that people all across the world are praying these same prayers. That's amazing. And that's just one little piece. Like, then there's the rosary, right? Then there's scapulars, there's devotions to saints and practices like that. There are relics, which are mind-blowing and crazy, and will really scare the non-Catholic Christian away if you dig deeply into that topic, right? There's so much. And Keith Nestor, you know this too, like the rosary, I don't think you would have imagined as a Protestant pastor you'd be leading, trillions online praying the rosary every day, right? Like, that's crazy.
Oh man, even when I became Catholic, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be doing that, but yeah, that's the thing. It's like, that's why I love to talk about venture. It's so much more than what we give it credit for. Oftentimes we talk about it. And when I talk to people about Catholicism, it's not so much from the perspective of, hey, you better be Catholic or else, because blah, blah, blah. I like to come at it like, oh my goodness, you need to learn about Catholicism because it's so amazing. I want to invite somebody into something incredible, not manipulate somebody into something because they're terrified of what happens if they don't do it. Like, it's the difference between running away from something and running to something. And a lot of people, I think, approach their Catholic apologetics or their evangelism as, well, you need to run away from Protestantism, or you need to run away from atheism, or run away from non-Catholicism, because all that's bad. And then at the same time, they'll say, well, yeah, and the Catholic Church messed up too. We've got all these problems, this and that, but at least it's the true church. Okay. I hate that so much. I'm so tired of trying to evangelize people to become Catholic out of one side of your mouth. Then out of the other side of your mouth, all you do is talk about why it's so horrible and terrible and all the bad problems with it. I would rather focus on inviting someone into something awesome and highlighting those aspects of them, because here's the deal. Both can be true at the same time. We can have issues with human beings and problems in the church, and it can be incredibly awesome at the same time. That's the reality of it. Okay. So which are we going to put forth to the world and say, this is what Catholicism is all about? All of our garbage? Because the truth is, if I was going to invite you to my house,
that was great. So you said the truth is, and then you froze. And me and Keith just went, what? Wait, what's the truth?
The
You gotta tell us.
The truth is, that's everything. Okay. You know, if I invited you to come hang out at my house for an evening, and I'm gonna cook you supper, and we're gonna have an awesome night together. I'm gonna make you something incredible. I'm gonna put my best foot forward. The house is gonna be clean. You're gonna receive the best I can offer you because I want to provide an awesome evening with you, right? Or for you. But if you moved into my house for 6 months, okay, now you're gonna see everything. Okay, you're gonna get the full picture of what it's like to deal with grouchy Keith, you know, or when, you know, my daughter's dog slobbers everywhere, you know, because he still lives with us for now. And you're gonna deal with what happens when there's nothing in the fridge to eat and we gotta have hamburgers with no condiments or toppings. You're gonna get the good, the bad, and the ugly. You'll see all that. Which one am I gonna put forth to you if I want you to be involved? You know what I'm saying? It's like in the Catholic Church, we've got to be able to say to people, look, here's what's awesome about it. Here's why it's so incredible. Come and join. You know, I'm inviting you into this. There's a place for you here. Not, oh, well, let me just tell you about all the garbage.
Here's all the dirty laundry in the couch. You can just scoot that on over.
Yeah.
I love that.
Did you put a comment up there? I couldn't quite see it.
Yeah, you know what? It was that the moment you putting your glasses on. Oh my god!
Oh, it was the moment the other two keep doing. I love that.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I gotta wear these glasses.
You
You have yours on already.
You look really smart like that, Keith. I'll be honest. No, grassroots Keith, you look the smartest.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I love those pop bottles. That's great. That says a lot. Listen, we're all getting old. Okay, so you talked about inviting people to your house, inviting them to the church. I love what you say, grassroots Keith, and you say it often as how to bring people into the church, and you always say bring them to adoration. Mm-hmm. Tell us why, because I agree with you, and I've had lots of guests on the show who said the same kind of thing. This actually is Peter Kreeft, no one even knows. This is his challenge. I remember reading him early on in my conversion journey, and he's too popular to come on my show, but he's a great guy, awesome Catholic convert, and this is his challenge. He said, if you want to test the veracity, the truth of Catholicism, go to adoration. Because if Christ is there in the Eucharist, he will meet you and draw you in. So I don't know if you knew that, Keith, but that's a famous Catholic philosopher's challenge. Tell us why. Tell us why you think this is so important as the route in for people to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, mind you, I'm not a convert, so I don't know what it was like before, essentially being Catholic. But I try to think, put myself in somebody else's shoes. Like if I were to bring someone to Mass, whether it's the ordinary form or, the extraordinary form, is going to be very overwhelming. Like a lot of things that we're doing that they're kind of like, wait, do I need to do that? Like, now we're kneeling, now we're standing, like that almost takes the front seat as opposed to like why we're truly there. And I think adoration, you just hang out. You're just there. And it's that personal connection that I think that, and you guys know, probably like personal relationship with Jesus is very important. And that's where I think we can make that connection, is having like, we're just sitting in front of Jesus. So let it all out. Let all your worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, I love that. I hadn't thought about that before. I was taking the front seat, like the confusion around the standing and the sitting and the kneeling, like that can crowd out our real experience of what's happening at Mass if you try and access that and don't quite understand it, right? I like that. And so, hey, try this instead. Just sit with Jesus. And I think you're right. I think Peter Kreeft is right. Kreeft is right. Why did you say his name?
I think it's actually Kreeft.
Kreeft. Peter Kreeft is right. Then Christ will meet you in the Eucharist there, right? He's going to, right? I don't think that, and I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know if that means, because again, for me, like my my first experience of adoration as a non-Catholic Christian was pretty intense. I can remember just dying to go and finally finding out what time it was at and going there in this beautiful church from the 1800s, which is old for churches in Canada. In Europe, that's modern. This was old, and just the smell of the incense when I came in, and the beauty of like the dimmed lights and the candles in the altar, and like the centrality of like, I was immediately captivated by this thing, right? But I don't know if that'll be the experience of everyone that goes to adoration, right? Especially if you go with not having done, like I did, like 4 years of research on the Catholic faith. But there's got to be, if somebody is going truly seeking to understand what's going on and truly seeking Christ, you got to think that Christ is going to meet them there on the altar in some kind of way, whether it's immediate or a longer lasting impact, or you know, my friend Dr. Doug Beaumont, who is also a convert and you know, taught at Evangelical Seminary for a number of years and then became Catholic through his research and teaching, describes it as a pebble, like the pebble in your shoe, right? Maybe it's the pebble in your shoe going to adoration that's going to start to bug you and eventually work away and be that thing you have to address. Maybe it starts there, right? But something has to happen. Something will happen, I think, if you go there, right?
Yeah. 100%. It's that seed, planting that seed. Like it's hands off from us. Just okay. It's all you, Jesus. Do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Amen.
I love it. Well, I don't know, guys. It's been an hour. Is this thing wrapping up? I don't know if we have a timeline here.
Why don't we take, how about this? Let's take 5 minutes and answer questions from the chat. If anybody has any questions for
I hadn't thought of. Is there a chat here?
Great idea.
Yeah.
Are people watching? I thought we were just hanging out in the basement here. Jeez. Okay.
So people in the chat, address your question to Keith.
Or Keith.
And no, don't say which one, and we'll let the Holy Spirit, we'll cast lots to see which Keith answers.
I'm looking at my chat. I don't see anything. I think people left from my chat.
I'm looking at the regular stream.
Yeah.
In StreamYard.
Yeah. I want to say thanks to all the viewers from the Philippines. Thanks, guys.
Oh, wow.
We got people from Singapore here. We got the Philippines. We got all over the place.
So I heard that there was and correct me if I'm wrong. Joan there. I saw someone at a grocery store. This is on Instagram. Someone's at a grocery store in the Philippines, and over the announcement of the grocery store, they were doing the Angelus. Like, that is very Catholic.
Grocery store.
I want to go to that grocery store. Yeah, like they're just stopping and doing the Angelus over the.
I wonder if all the ladies like said it super loud when they were like walking through the aisle.
I love that. I always say that my show is big in the Philippines because it's always in the charts in the Philippines. I don't actually know how many people in the Philippines actually listen to the show, but I hope no one's here to correct me and tell me actually no one's ever heard of you in the Philippines.
All right, Keith Little, if you see a question in the comment, it's up to you to put that up because I can't do that.
I will. Here's one from Catholic Arrows. Can you see with the glasses on?
I can totally see now.
Is Jesus in the tabernacle as powerful as exposition?
I don't think Jesus has degrees of power. I think he's all power, all everywhere, all the time. I think, so.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was recently at, this is my own thing for me and the priest in confession to talk about maybe, but I'll air my dirty laundry here for everyone to hear about.
Right.
A while back, I was at a conference, and we went with a whole group of guys into the church to listen, there's music playing, and there was time of confession. There was, I think, 4 or 5 priests around the church for confession. And I was really miffed that the Eucharist, the host wasn't out on the altar for in exposition in the monstrance. I was kind of miffed, and it was just in the tabernacle there, like the candle was burning, so Christ was in the tabernacle. But I was I thought, why not? Why don't we bring out Christ on the altar for everyone to see, in a bit more of a tangible, visible fashion? So I don't know that it's more powerful, but for me in that moment, I was getting a little grumpy that nobody was. I thought, hello, can somebody just bring out? Why not? You know what I mean? Like why not? I don't know.
I mean, if like as a Catholic, the reason why the light or the candle is lit. But I guess if I was maybe not knowledgeable, I probably wouldn't understand. Like, oh, there's something in there. I don't know what it is. But if it's like during adoration, like it's right there in your face. So is it whether more powerful for me, whether I see, I mean, it's like a sense of comfort to see the tabernacle candlelight on. I think that's more, it's a comfort. But when, during adoration, like it's a different powerfulness
Yeah.
to it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that you can, because some people are also asking in the chat if there's different level of grace you receive, or if it's measurable. I don't think it's necessarily measurable. I don't think that anyone could say that it's measurable, and I'm not sure we know that. But yeah, I don't know. That's yeah.
Good question.
Yeah. Another question here: who is your favorite saint and why? This is an easy one for me. I don't know about you guys. Can I answer first?
Go for it.
Go for it.
My Padre Pio, hands down, for me. And I know he's popular. I don't know if everybody loves him as much as I love him, but maybe I should choose more obscure saints. But for me, Padre Pio is just, he's the guy, because time and again he has revealed himself. Like, if ever I was to doubt that the saints are real and praying for us and acting in our lives, and and being a conduit of grace, of God's grace, of course, not working on their own, not doing miracles on their own, but channeling Christ, channeling God's grace towards us. Padre Pio is the guy for me. Like, I have so many stories of times when Padre Pio has just come in miraculous fashion. My favorite one is when I almost quit doing the podcast, and I was like 6 months into it. No one was listening to the podcast. Nobody cared. And I was like, I thought this was a calling from God. I thought I was meant to do this. But why is no one listening? Why does nobody care? And it was a lot of work. I was spending probably 5 hours editing every episode. Like, it was like another full-time job. And I was exhausted by it. And I remember I was sitting at the sink doing dishes, and I said, Padre Pio, pray for me that Christ would send me a sign to let me know that I'm on the right track here, that I should keep doing this, because I'm feeling exhausted, and I'd love to know that this is the right track. And I kid you not, like minutes later, my hands are in the dishwater, I'm all soaped up. I get an email, on my phone, ding, it dings, and it's like from a listener, and the email says, I love your show, keep on doing it. It's great. I'm being fed by it. I love it. And he signed the email, Nick Gaboni, who I've now had on my show. I've talked to him. We're friends. Nick Gaboni, CEO, Padre Pio Center in America. And I was like,
wow.
Wait a minute.
Incredible.
Padre Pio, sent his CEO to as a sign. And I thought there's nothing, there's no, there's no way around that as a crazy miracle. Like, so that's kind of the seal of deal for me, for Padre Pio as my favorite saint of all time. There are other saints who have also shown up in kind of miraculous ways, or saints that I really can resonate with because I'm a cranky, grumpy guy and have
You're cordial. What are you talking about?
Issues. It's an
I don't believe it.
Aspirational title. But for me, Padre Pio is the number one, and every month is some kind of new hilarious blessing. I'm waiting in terror, because Padre Pio is one of those guys who did weird miraculous things, like walk through walls in more than one place at once. He flew at one point, apparently. I'm just waiting in terror to see him at one point, like turn a corner at night, late at night in the dark, and just see a shadow and just be scared half to death and maybe have a heart attack and meet Christ face to face in that moment. So I'm still waiting. What about you, Keith? Who's your favorite? See, I did.
I'll go.
I was waiting to do that.
Saint Genesius.
Oh.
No explanation. No, this is my confirmation saint. He's patron saint of actors, lawyers, and prostitutes. So that's fun. But this story was just basically it was this back in ancient Roman times, Diocletian was emperor, and this actor, Genesius, really hated Christians, made fun of them in plays and theatrics. And there was one point where he had to, I guess, do research on how to be baptized. And so he figured it out. Great, perfect. And so on stage, as he's being baptized, he immediately converts. And then basically professes it in front of Diocletian. Diocletian's like, "Are you kidding me? No." And so he ends up killing Genesius. And it's just, went downhill from there. Or went uphill for Genesius, but downhill for Diocletian, obviously.
Wow.
When we were in Croatia, we went to Diocletian's palace in Split. It's in Split, Croatia, and where he persecuted the church brutally and hated Christianity so much. And what's hilarious is this, his palace is like the size of maybe like 3 city blocks. It's huge. And inside it's all been converted into like this outdoor mall area. Well, where his bedroom was is now a Catholic church, and they put the altar right where his bed was.
Ultimate burn right there. That's
amazing. Yeah, awesome. All right, my favorite saint is Saint Ignatius of Antioch. I love his letters. I love his story. He died in about 107 to 109 AD on his way to Rome after he had done something, we don't really know what, to anger the Roman emperor. And as he's being taken toward his execution, he writes these letters to the churches. And the thing I love about him so much is that he's so clear about Catholicism. He talks about the Eucharist, he talks about the bishops, and he's just got such a passion. He says, "Don't rescue me. Don't try to stop this. This is God's plan here. And I will be ground in the wheat of these wild animals." Like, this is my path to sainthood, basically. And I've always had a devotion to him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you read as a non-Catholic Christian and go, "Oh, geez, what have I been doing?" Because he
nothing without bishops, the bishop. Right? Obey the bishop as Jesus Christ. What?
You go,
no.
You go, wait, I don't have a bishop. What do I do? And why did
Jake's a bishop? Doesn't that count?
Yeah, that's amazing. One of those really convicting Catholic saints, right? Who lived, that Catholic life, right? And unmistakably Catholic. Like, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Guys, it's been a fun time. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
I hopefully people enjoyed watching this and will enjoy watching this in the future. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I don't do live streams very often. It's kind of
you're a pro now.
It's kind of scary.
I know. This is it. You got one on your belt. I just realized I missed opportunity for a thumbnail. Was you probably seen it like a meme. It's like 3 Spider-Men are pointing at each other.
We'll do it again.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, we have to do it again. And thanks. Thank you, Keith Nestor. Why don't each of us take 1 second just to share people who are listening on a different channel, where they can go to find and follow each of us. So I'm The Cordial Catholic, youtube.com/The Cordial Catholic, or The Cordial Catholic podcast. Cordial is Cordial for those who need to spell that out. On podcast everywhere you find podcast. Listen to most of Malta, I think, very popular in Malta, in the Philippines, and Singapore. So thank you to those of you out there today who are watching or listening from those places. Keith, where can they go to find your stuff? One more time.
I'll go. Okay. They can find me on Instagram. That's primarily where I do my postings on Instagram at Grassroot Catholic. No S in that. Well, Grassroot Catholic, no grassroots. I'm confusing people now. Also YouTube, and that's it.
Awesome. Well, you guys are on my YouTube channel also, if you're on that. If not, Keith Nestor on YouTube, also the Rosary Crew with Keith Nestor. I'm on Instagram as Keith Nestor Catholic. And that's, I have a website, down2earthministry.org, down the number 2earthministry.org.
Nice.
And all kinds of awesome stuff. Thanks, guys.
It's great. It's been great talking to you, my brother.
Yeah, this was fun.
Fellow
Thank
Keiths.
you, Keith from Grassroot Catholic, for organizing this. Well, I shouldn't say organizing.
I did it all, everybody. I did everything. I did all the heavy lifting. These guys are just
the people watching have no idea how little organization went into this.
For getting this date on the calendar and then doing nothing else to help.
That was
I'm
pretty
the
much it.
least unorganized Keith
until about 20 minutes before we went live. Hey, we gonna do
Yeah.
this? I don't know. Are we? Okay. What are we gonna do? I don't know.
Yeah. Thank
Will this work? Okay, I'll start a YouTube channel right now.
Thanks, Kevin.
But it was fun. It was fun.
All right. You guys
All right,
take
gentlemen.
care. Thanks for
God
watching,
bless
everybody
everybody.
out there. God bless.
Thanks for being
God
here.
bless.
Take care.
Love you guys.